All righty.
Okay, we'll call the meeting to order. Could everyone please rise? And Councilman Slacka, could you please lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, and I don't see it here, but roll call, please.
Councilman McIntosh?
Here.
Councilwoman Martin?
Here.
Councilman Slakta?
Here.
Mayor Nelson?
Here.
Councilman Simmons?
Here.
Councilman Gibson?
Here.
Councilman Longcart?
Here.
Hey, we're all here again. Okay, good. Good morning, everyone.
Good morning, Mayor.
And we are here to talk about downtown redevelopment in the downtown area. And so we're going to have public comment at this time. Anyone wishing to speak in reference to the downtown area specifically, please come forward.
Good morning, folks. Boy, we've been working on this a long time and with a lot of hope. Excuse me a second. First of all, I know you're going to be discussing the Lemon Tree property, and I think Bob Hilliard and Steve Rayner from the Lions Club Farmers Market will be coming along shortly. But don't swap out this land for a roundabout or anything. This market raises thousands of dollars for the Bonita Springs Assistance Office and for the eye clinic, and more people come to the farmers market to downtown than I think they would come downtown to see a roundabout. I'm for roundabouts. I think they're great. Some of you don't think so, but some of you do. Anyhow, I hope we'll do that. Instead, I think the money would be better spent. We've talked about this in the past, is a median north of Terry Street. I know the council's focus has been on the little pod south of the river, but I really think that attention needs to be paid there because the median with plantings would be a safe oasis for pedestrians. Also would narrow the road and bring it to human scale, make it look less industrial, be a traffic calming device because when they come around that corner near Buffalo Chips, people are still going faster than they should be. Mm-hmm. It does move down to 30 miles an hour there, and people don't know that when they're coming from the north part of Old 41. Also, please spend funds to bury utilities. Boy, that's going to make a big difference. We just had a bunch more utility poles stuck on a Royal Road, and boy, are they ugly. But it would make a huge visual difference and be better during hurricanes. So, and then for about 8 years, I tried to get those flowering trees planted on Front Street to hide the mobile home and the railroad track and provide shade for the parking lot. I know staff scoped that out, and the council budgeted about $10,000. Our city manager told me that, we might move the utilities over there, which was promising, but I don't know if you can in the right-of-way. But it'd be great to see trees planted there, whichever. Change the color palette. Gosh, please. That's good for Cape Cod, not good for Bonita. I'm sorry. In the old 41 area, the color palette is, the most successful businesses on Old 41 seem to have a very happy Key West color palette. And they seem to be doing quite well. And then last, I don't know if this is coming up because I didn't see what all the discussion items, but make sure that on the Bamboo Village property that you keep the 50-foot buffer on either side for jazz on the green and keep the canyon effect off of that property. I think you can have a project there, but I think we need to keep it in the same style as to follow through with what's happening on the other side, which has got a lot of green space. So I thank you and good luck in your deliberations. Boy, we really need to have something happen down there. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Anyone else this time, please come forward.
Good morning, everyone. Kathy McGrath, the record. As most of you know, my late husband and I have been pretty much involved in downtown Bonita. We built Nelson Plaza next to Ben's parents' hardware store. We were original members of the Old 41 Business Association, and some of them are no longer living here or not with us. And all along, we've been part of trying to see things move along. And this, I think, is very exciting. The most important thing I want to see is that it's walkable, available to people just going around there, that it's pleasant, to bring more and more businesses and people down here. That's the most important. Now, you have a lot of decisions to make. I don't have any comments on any particular design or thing that's been planned or unplanned, but I'm just looking forward. Like, hoping one of these days Shangri-La will be open for business. That would be a big draw, and a lot of things Martha said. I had some information a couple of years ago. Unfortunately, I don't have it. It was on Winter Park, Florida, which is a beautiful community in Central Florida that has all kind of pedestrian-friendly, bicycle-friendly, people-friendly attributes. But unfortunately, I cleaned out my files and it's gone. And I asked Martha, and she remembers it, but we don't have the information. But I know you all are interested in seeing good things happen there, and thanks.
Thank you very much. Anyone else this time, please come forward. No? Okay. And we will go ahead and proceed to our presentation. Carl.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Council members, good morning. We're going to spend maybe a couple of hours this morning talking about specific things regarding direction that we would like to get from the council regarding the downtown. You will see as this presentation goes forward that a lot of these topics are interrelated. And so what you decide on one may well affect another. But those are the kinds of things we need to kind of root through today so we can have clear direction on where to go. Just to give you a brief update, first off, staff did a great job on this presentation. I'm very pleased. I've seen it. They've gone through it with me. And I just want to give kudos to Arlene and to Jen and Jay and John and all of those involved in this presentation. You will see them up this morning as well. As far as RFPs go, we currently have had an RFP out for improvements in the downtown area. This is the major design, which are the medians, the landscaping, the parking, the drainage, those kinds of things. We have 3 firms selected to move forward in the selection process, going to a staff committee. We will be having those presentations, I believe, yet this week. Staff will then be coming forward to you, making a recommendation on ranking those firms, 1, 2, and 3. So next thing is we also have an RFP that is going to be coming to you on August the 20th regarding the bamboo property. And this will be, with your approval, we'll be going out in the street after that meeting to get to see what kind of interest there is in the marketplace with regards to that property and what type of development we could possibly expect in the future. So that's very close to moving forward as well. We also have an RFP that is going to be in preparation for the Levin property. That's a piece, as you'll recall, we bought about 1.5 years ago. That was bought specifically to land bank that piece of property for economic development. That will be discussed perhaps a little bit this morning as well. And then last, with regards to mobility fees that were recently mentioned, we expect to have a report, a high-level report to you at the September 17th meeting with regards to mobility fees, how they work, how the revenue is generated, what you can spend that revenue on, and those will all be important factors as you decide whether or not you want to move away from impact fees in favor of mobility fees. I did want to ask one question about the RFP on the selection of the firm for downtown improvements in general. When we bring the ranking forward, does the council want to hear that night at that meeting from the #1 ranked firm, or would you like to hold off on anything like that? Because again, what you'll do normally is the staff selection committee will meet, we'll have a recommendation to rank the firms 1, 2, and 3. When we bring those recommendations forward to you, would you be interested in hearing from the #1 ranked firm, or would you like to wait on that or not interested in that?
My opinion is that we kind of wait to make that decision. Let's go fishing first and see what we catch, and I think then that decision is going to kind of make itself.
I was going to say,
I think.
I'd probably like to hear from the #3 and 2 firm,
Yeah,
and 1.
Well,
but
all right, well, we're not planning to do that. That's not a
I
normal
understand,
process.
But I thought you were asking us.
Well, I was asking if you wanted to hear from the #1 ranked firm. No, the night that we present the ranking 1, 2, and 3.
Yeah, we're assuming that we're going to actually have an applicant, and we're assuming that we're going to have more than one.
You already have 4 firms or 5 firms that have submitted. We've narrowed it to 3 to interview with, make presentations to the staff committee. So you already have 3 firms. And again, this is on the general downtown improvements.
Just the general downtown improvements.
Correct. This is not bamboo. This is not anything like that.
I would be in favor of that. I wouldn't mind listening to the number one person.
I'd like to hear from all 3.
Yeah,
Council, what else?
I'd like to see all the options too.
Yeah. What about the rest of you? I don't know why we would treat this any different than any process that we go through, actually.
That's what I'm kind of like.
I mean, I'm kind of leaning towards what our actual process is. Audrey?
Yes, in our actual process, and let me go through. This is a design build. We have a selection committee set up of staff members. On August 14th, they will actually, which is, I believe, Thursday morning, they'll be doing presentations. The 3 shortlisted firms, they went through the 5 applicants who did submit, and I believe shortlisted it to 3, Carl?
Yes.
And at that time, it's a closed meeting per Sunshine Law. It's one of the few times we are able to have a closed meeting. Records will be open afterwards. We will have presentation, and then staff will ask questions, and then there will be deliberations, at which time they will rank 1, 2, 3. This is the normal process, as well as doing with design build. Now, alternatively, if you don't want to go that process, what I would make the suggestion would be to have either a special meeting or time carved out, because this takes several hours, to go through, and then council would rank them themselves. I would think that would be a better position than being in a situation, if council decided they wanted to go that route, that would be a better situation than having staff rank and then having them re-ranked. I think that could be problematic.
And just for council information, we have budgeted 4 hours for staff time to go through this process this week
Okay.
to interview those firms.
All right, Council, so we can do whatever you would like to on this, but following the typical procedure, what you would do is just go ahead and have the top-ranked one. We could have the top-ranked one come in and tell us what their vision is of how they're going to proceed, because right at this time, that's about all they can do, is tell us about their qualifications, right?
Yeah, that's correct. And also, that assumes that the council goes ahead and confirms that number 1 ranking.
Yeah.
Okay, so our recommendation is just that, a recommendation. Council can choose one of the other firms if they choose to do so.
And so what you had suggested was that the number 1 firm, we could have them come in and then go ahead and make that decision at that time, or we could make it before. Either way, right?
Correct.
Council?
Well, just a couple
What's your thoughts?
questions. I'm trying to find middle ground here. If typically, if the number 1 choice came in, would it's really about what they bring forward, their skills and so on. Is it not correct?
That's correct.
It's not a proposal as such. Is that correct or
That's
not?
correct. We
So-
look at their experience, their
Right. So what you would show council in green sheets would it be all the information that you had in front of you for those 4 hours to identify which organization had the best set of skills and experiences? Or
Probably not all the information. If the council wanted that, we could do it.
So if-
Typically, it would be a green sheet that would say, we've interviewed these 3
Right,
firms based
and-
on the criteria.
yes, and that's your
recommending
choice.
this.
And normally you show the basics for that person.
Correct.
If, just try to satisfy some of the concerns about all 3, would it be improper or inappropriate to have all 3 of the sets of information available, even though we didn't have them all come in and make presentations?
Oh, absolutely. We could make that available, sure.
I don't know if that satisfies.
Yeah, no, I
you.
think that's fine.
We would just tell you that sometimes our experience is that the way a firm looks on paper is different than how the presentations actually go.
Yeah,
And
I
how we
frankly,
feel with them.
I'm not interested in seeing 4 hours worth of presentation. I have enough confidence in staff, having watched you do this. But I think, in all fairness, if there's this concern about who's going to do it, and I will probably have to abstain because one of the finalists is a client of mine, so I will get out of it. But I
Okay,
think
so council, why don't we do this? Why don't we go ahead and have staff do it the way they're doing it, which is to make the recommendation for the top 1, and then they give you the information for the top 3. So you have that in your possession so that when they come in, when council makes the recommendation, okay, here's our number one person, council, what do you want to do? You've already had that, and you can go ahead and we can have a conversation about, well, why didn't you do number three? Because I like them because of this and this. I think you'll have all the information you could. Having them standing here telling you the same thing that you've got in front of you probably isn't going to do any good. All you're going to be is who's the best presenter. We've run into that syndrome before many times. It becomes a who's the best presenter contest instead of who's the most qualified. So would that be all right with council, as long as you have all the information?
Absolutely. You need a motion?
Yes.
I'll make a motion.
Make a motion to proceed in that manner.
Proceed
You know-
to have this.
We're fine with that, absolutely.
Is there a second?
Yes.
Is a motion a second? Any discussion?
Could we sit in on that meeting if we wanted to? Your 4-hour meeting?
Yes.
looking to the city attorney.
Again, it's not as sunshine. If we have one of you, that's fine. This is one of the few times, it is a sunshine meeting in the sense that it's recorded. We keep all information so that afterwards we can, disclose it to other people. But the objective is, if there's discussion strategy dealing with selection, we do not want necessarily that to be with all the other candidates before the candidates get to do the presentation.
That is, and also I would say that, Mike, that is contrary to what our protocol is, which is this is specifically a staff function, and council members are supposed to separate themselves from that, unless council wants to make it a council function to be the vetting of that.
No.
So I mean, being present at that meeting, I think, has an effect. And then you're like, well, if one person does, well, does another person? So I don't know.
Yeah, but I was thinking more of a fly on the wall, not really involved in
Right.
discussion.
Well,
just to
council
see the
member, I do,
presentations.
these interviews are scheduled for Thursday, and I thought you had something else to do also.
Yeah, this Thursday I want to be, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Plus, if you allow one, you got to allow everybody. Who do you not allow? So
That's the bigger problem.
anyway, okay. So we have a motion and a second on the floor. Is there any further discussion? Roll call.
Councilwoman Martin?
Aye.
Councilman Slakta?
Aye.
Mayor Nelson?
Aye.
Councilman Simmons?
Aye.
Councilman Gibson?
Aye.
Councilman Longcart?
Aye.
Councilman McIntosh?
And just to reiterate, that is the RFP for the design and engineering on the this section there, and kind of speak broadly to the public a little bit about what that will consist of, what they're actually going to be designing, just for the public's benefit.
They're going to be generally designing, I'll tell you what, I'm going to let Matt come up,
There he is.
because I figure I'll probably miss.
Hey, Matt, what are we doing?
They're going to be generally.
Who are you? Identify yourself.
My name's Matt Feeney, Public Works Director. The design build RFQ is for firms to design water quality improvements, quantity and quality improvements for that section of the downtown between Oak Creek and the Imperial River. Streetscape improvements to include medians, wider sidewalks, areas for landscaping, and street improvements. So it's basically streetscape and drainage.
And you're including parking? Parking?
On-street parking, yes,
Yeah.
on some of the side streets, and we're trying to maximize our value. I know there've been some discussions of trying to extend that core area north to Terry Street. We did reflect that in some of the conceptual plans that we put out there for the firms. The idea of using the design-build approach is to work with the designer and the contractor so that we can maximize the city's bang for its buck, essentially, so that we can take those opportunities. Some of the projects are the roundabout, which you'll be discussing today, or potential for a roundabout, as well as improvements to the bridge to make it look, oh, well, that's not the drawing I thought it was, to make it look more like the renderings that City Council had adopted with a open view corridor.
Okay, but included in this the study, this engineering, it's going to be, because predominantly what I thought it was going to be water quality and parking improvements. Well, not improvements, parking period, because if we go through with the bamboo and the other part of it, we're going to be looking for parking.
Mhm.
So hopefully it will have some recommendations or some designs in that regard.
Yes, sir. I mean, it's water quality and parking in the form of how you improve the streetscape. There is definitely a streetscape component to the old 41 itself. but also parking on the side streets. Feltz kind of comes into play in that area as well.
Okay. All right. Any other questions for Matt? All right. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you. With that,
Carry on.
I'd like to turn the meeting over to Jennifer Hagan from Community Development, who will be starting our presentation off. We would ask, if the council does not mind, that we try to get through the entire presentation first, and we will have a chance to come back to each of the issues that are discussed and discuss them in more detail and get direction from council, if that please council. Jennifer?
Good morning.
Good morning.
For the record, Jennifer Dufala Hagan, Community Development. We are here today to re-examine the redevelopment of downtown. There's been lots of discussion, there's been lots of hopes and dreams, frustrations the last few, well, almost 15 years as a city. And staff has put together this presentation to basically handle some concepts that we've been looking at, some issues that have come up, and how we want to address them in the future as we spearhead development for downtown. So, as Carl mentioned, this presentation, I'll be providing a very general overview. I'm going to start at Bonita Beach Road and work my way up to the Bamboo property, and we're going to target some of those areas that are up for discussion today, go over the general concepts, and then we're going to break it down at the end after the presentation at each of these bullets that staff is asking for direction from council on. So, to begin with, we're here to refine the downtown vision. We're looking for direction on many items, but basically, how do we want to craft the development of our downtown and the unique opportunities that we have, not only in natural features, but also historically, and what we'd like to see to enhance that, to bring people here to want to live, work, and play in downtown Bonita. The topics for discussion today are the Lemon Tree property. We're also looking at the industrial district. We want to address some potential development patterns, as well as maybe look at a destination feature for the downtown area corridor. Also, the potential of creating a historical destination. We're wanting to look at the idea of developing a government center, and also tying this all together with Complete Streets, which brings in our sustainability strategy that you have adopted. To begin with, redevelopment of downtown, we want to look at starting from Bonita Beach Road, and one of the first things that we come in contact with is the idea of an industrial district. In our conceptual master concept plan for downtown, the area between Tennessee and Industrial Street is considered sub-area 11. It has been crafted to include flex space, which allows for commercial and industrial uses. Currently, the corridor is a little blah, I guess we could say. It has a lot of potential, and we're looking for direction on how you envision this as we move forward. Some of the ideas that have come up in the past have been to use this as a mixed-use district, to include maybe an arts district, to include maybe some artist lodging lofts for younger professionals, as well as some unique opportunities for coffee shops, bike shops, art. Many towns that have been experiencing refill have started some of this transitioning with the concept of an art district. So one of the potential areas for this could be the industrial district. So that's something for us to consider. Moving on again, we're looking at the idea of what flex space is in context of downtown Bonita. And one of the things that comes into play too, just by proximity, is the Shangri-La Resort. They are also some of the main property owners in this corridor. So those are some of the things that we need to address. And there are potential conversations for right-of-way vacation. Shangri-La folks have come to the city and started preliminary application discussions to vacate part of Tennessee and Industrial in the past. So those conversations are still open. And as we pursue this, staff is looking at the potential of connectivity and redevelopment of this area. So that is one of the topics of discussion today. Moving north, the next concept is what kind of gateway for downtown do we envision? In the past, there has been the use of archways. There's also been the use of clock towers. If you look at any old historical town in Florida, you'll see some of these features. So there is the potential of us creating something like that that would actually give you a sense of arrival for downtown. I found this picture that I thought was very unique. It is the opening of the Tamiami Trail in 1928, connecting Dade to Collier County. And again, it's just an example in the past of how they've used an archway as a sense of arrival. And I don't know if anybody can identify this clock tower, but it is one of our clock towers. Sorry, I think I heard the answer. University of Florida. So that is one of their features. I just put it in black and gray, so it might not have to, spur some thoughts there. Moving on, as we decide the concept of a destination feature, we have to look at potential development patterns that would align themselves with whatever feature we decide. And one of the things in some of our rendering has been the use of a roundabout as a sense of arrival. So we just wanted to reintroduce that picture to get you thinking. This has been one of the suggestions. Whether that is something that you all want to pursue is something that we'll discuss later, but it is in our rendering. And one of the locations that staff has potentially examined is Dean Street and also Pennsylvania Street. So those are going to be addressed later, but that is the introduction to the idea of a roundabout. Also, as another destination feature and a way of traffic calming in addition to the roundabout, the Busk Street Plan has presented the idea of median enhancement to enhance with greenery and landscaping the medians also as a way as traffic calming, also known as a traffic diet, road diet. So that's just another idea and can give potential for not only traffic calming but enhancement of the downtown corridor. Moving on north, obviously the Lemon Tree property comes into play. Some of the potential discussion points that we will be examining later is the potential for Quinn property to swap. He has come to the city with the proposal to swap his property on the south for the Lemon Tree property, and that would address some of the sheer unity access as well as the parking. And one of the things that we would have to consider is the connectivity of the alley to maintain our grid structure. And what does the city and council see for future use of Lemon Tree and how it's being used today. So those are some of the topics that we'll be addressing when we come to Lemon Tree property. But again, this property is pivotal as we move forward with development patterns because it is at one of those target areas of our the beginning to our downtown corridor, or the core to downtown, excuse me. As we move further north, another concept that is not new is the idea of a historical destination. One of the things that has been proposed by not only the Historical Preservation Board, but also by planners in the past before the city was even a city in some of the old CRA work, was the idea of putting together some sort of historical village. Now, we did follow that lead in moving a lot of the artist cottages near the Lyles Hotel, so that does give us some sense of what this concept could be, but even to move it forward, the idea of possibly relocating some of the historical features and buildings of the downtown area, not only along Old US 41, but broadening that scope to the east and west, and the potential of moving them somewhere to the Abernathy, Felts, and Ragsdale area. So in fact, instead of leaving them in place, you would bring them to one potential location that they would share, and that could become a village of historical resources and buildings. So that is another potential concept that we can bring up for discussion. Moving on from going on to the north, we come to the idea and the concept of a redevelopment for downtown to encompass the idea of a government center. This is not a new concept. There are many cities and municipalities out there, due to their size, have created annexes for their municipal services throughout their counties and their cities. And some of the examples of that are, most people are aware of, is the Palm Beach County Government Center. as well as the Sarasota County Annex. They have several different sites, one of their newer ones being in Venice. So even the citizens in the south portion of Sarasota County still has access to those facilities in a consolidated geographical area, sometimes with either one or multiple buildings. One of the new proposals that's out there is the city of Miramar. This is their plan. They are looking to create a city complex that would have their city hall downtown. Again, that's not something that staff is proposing, but it is the concept of having all the city options as well as the county to be located in one general area. The plan that Miramar has come up with is this basically for their city compound and promenade. And what they did is they placed their city hall and some different municipal buildings down here along the waterway. And then they have the promenade here that continues down to other professional liner buildings and forces the parking internally. I'm not saying this is something that would fit downtown, our downtown for our downtown purposes. I just want to express how new towns that have the availability to build from the ground up are following this model. When I went back and looked at some of the stuff that we've done in the past, in 1995, Bonita Springs, the CRA, for downtown, developed this plan. It was put together by Team Plan. And as you can see, our government center was part of that. And that was back in 1995. Here is the bandshell property. Here's Depot Park. And here's the current community center with expanding that use to include other municipal operations as well as professional buildings. So it's neat to see that back even in 1995, before we were a city, this plan was there based on our grid pattern and the potential for downtown development. Again, this is an aerial of downtown. I'm a very visual person, so I like to see what that would look like. Again, here's our bandshell. Here's the Lyle. Here's some of the businesses along Old 41, and the Lyle's Hotel is up here. It was cut off, but this is again the area that has the potential to be some sort of government center. Also, with the acquisition of the Liberty Church property, it does give us a unique opportunity to provide that or to encompass that vision that was provided back in 1995.
Does that property really wedge like that, or is that parallax that's doing that?
I'm sorry?
Is that a parallax? That's a little scientific term for you. It looks like the property wedges out bigger towards the right, but it doesn't really do that, does it? Is that just a parallax?
No, there's actually the original plat of the parcel where the bamboo tree is has a different size dimension than the adjacent.
So it actually gets wider as it goes to the east.
Yeah, it's strange.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. All right.
So,
All right. Thank you.
For those at home, our surveyor just said that the aerial does reflect the plat for that area. So moving forward, how do we tie this all together? And one of the things that the city is looking at doing and staff is pursuing is how do we make our sustainability strategy happen? And one of the things that council was very supportive of was creating the using the tool of complete streets as a potential. And one of the things that is nice about this option is that it is a tool that can formalize how we tie all these properties together by not only making the focus on the automobile, but also looking at pedestrian bike traffic as well as transit, and how can we make our constrained roads, and when I say constrained, I mean size, they're small roads, how can we make them available to all users? So that's another concept that we're going to be looking at in a moment. And we finish our visual tour with the bamboo property. Again, that is something that we talked about briefly this morning already, but we will be coming back with some updates at the end of the staff discussion with this property. So that completes my general overview. What we're going to ultimately ask of you is direction to staff regarding the Lemon Tree property, the idea of the destination feature, which would include either the roundabout or some kind of traffic calming, and look at the potential of vacating some of the right-of-way around the Shangri-La resorts. We're also looking at direction for an industrial mixed-use district, a historical potential village or destination, what a government center would look like and what would encompass that. The concept of bringing the library there, replacing or building on or the demolition of community hall and the church property. And following up with the complete streets, tying it all together, and I will introduce some of the principles to complete streets and how this may be an application that we could use downtown that'd be very advantageous. And we will wrap it up with staff updates in regard to the Bamboo property, the design build RFQ, excuse me, and the Levin property. Carl went into those a little bit, but we'll have a little bit more enhanced discussion about those. So to start off well, first of all, let me answer any questions that you may have of me before we break these down into these topic areas. Are there any questions at this point?
Council, you have any questions for Jim before we move on?
Okay.
Kind of a general question, and don't need to take a lot of time, but when you say they park internally, you had showed a graph there.
Mm-hmm.
It was a great picture.
Councilman.
Or do you want to do this later?
Can we get the microphone up?
Do you want to do this later? I mean, when we get into some of the...
The government center?
Yeah, why don't
Absolutely.
we do that? Sure.
Yeah, that
Okay,
makes
we'll get
sense.
into it later. Great.
Okay.
Okay, yes, go ahead.
Just one quick question. We didn't talk about library, the new library, location of library, is that part of the?
The government
discussion?
center.
All right,
Mhm.
thank you.
Yep.
Okay,
So-
any other questions before I move on? All right, why don't you go ahead and carry on?
So you're going to hear from a variety of staff members on each of these points appropriate to their subject or their topic area. And one of the things that we're going to start with first will be the industrial area. The industrial district, again, the things that we're looking to speak about is expanding the district. Right now, the sub-district stops on the western portion of Industrial Street. Let's see if I can go back here. On Industrial Street. So these buildings here are not part of that sub-district area. So it may be something that we want to include those buildings to make the district more complete. So that is one of the points of discussion. Also, the idea of the flex space and the potential art district or lofts. Arlene's going to speak about that just a little bit. Arlene, myself, and Matt will be supporting this point of discussion, as well as the Shangri-La Resort right-of-way vacation and some of the connectivity of that industrial district. So to go back to the introduction of the district, do you have any thoughts, or are there any, I guess, do you think one way or another about how you envision that industrial area? Staff would like to be able, we have a lot of requests come in for heavier industrial uses in that area that may or may not suit the need for that sub-district. So that's one of the things that as staff meets with potential applicants for property down there that we would need to get some sort of direction on. Also, when Matt comes up with some of the vacation from the Shangri-La point of view, all of these come into play with that area. So that's something we just wanted to start the conversation with that.
Okay, would you like to start, Steve?
Yes, please. I'm trying to get oriented here. I'm looking at a map of the CRA, and I had the slide up there.
Could you bring that up?
Yeah, could you bring up that other slide, Deb?
The map of the area.
I have one of the CRA.
Where's that down?
Well,
The
if
thing
it's
in your
gonna be
hand, can you click backwards?
It's
and-
not on my presentation. Did
It's-
we have it preloaded
What-
as asking?
I don't know where it is. Jelly put it on here. So at any rate,
Oh, wow. So there wasn't a picture of that came up a while ago?
it's on the, try the PowerPoint down at the bottom.
Was it part of my presentation?
No,
or
no.
did you
I
preloaded
asked
it,
him to
right?
put it up there because I wanted
Was
to.
I hallucinating? There wasn't a drawing on there that came
No.
up on that screen?
Oh, there it is.
Could you
Oh, there.
make it bigger by putting the slideshow on where it takes? All right. I'm sorry to do that to you, but for me, it's
Oh,
easier.
that's all right. I feel better now.
And I didn't want the mayor to hallucinate any longer.
You need more.
Well, I need more than you have to. The industrial area, Jen, is that from the river in Tennessee down up to the creek there?
The industrial area is Bonita Beach Road. Let me get my bearings now. Bonita Beach Road here. Is this Old 41? Sorry.
No, that's a railroad track.
That's the railroad track, but this is Industrial Street right here. So, and this is Old 41. So it is
I'm
this
sorry,
triangle.
I have to interrupt. You had another picture up there
Yes,
that
I
showed
did.
the Shangri-La properties. It was a really good picture of what the area that he's talking about.
Okay.
I'm sorry to have thrown you off.
No. I mean, I'm just,
Well,
yeah, well,
well, part of it's because it's part of the CRA, and I want to know how that affects what we're doing.
Okay, give me 1 second. I
right.
did not know there was another, that Dr. Steve had a,
I didn't intend to throw a monkey wrench in this thing, but
no problem. So this is what we're going to do.
well, no, if we're going to talk about the area, we should be looking at the area.
Hold on, give me a second here.
That's right. Hurry up, faster.
Settle down. Hold on 1 second. The plan that we have for Old 41, the master conceptual plan, labels this area here as Tennessee Street Industrial. So just to give you an idea, that is labeled as 11, the sub-district. Now, if we go back to, I heard Jay say 29. I feel like Wheel of Fortune. No, $1. This, I didn't want to bring this up yet because this is Matt's slide, but it's a great aerial for the topic.
Well, Matt's just going to have to suffer.
I'm going to just steal his thunder. No, he's going to tell you all about this.
That's good. Thank you.
Jumping
But
in on your slide. Matt.
These, I spoke earlier about Shangri-La and their applications that they have had in the past to vacate portions of industrial and Tennessee Street. These areas here, Matt has highlighted in blue. There's also a little area up here, also on Kentucky Street, that is very near proximity of Oak Creek. And so we have the county in the past. I'm going to let him come up and speak, but
Well,
Can we go back to
let's
Steve?
let's
Yes.
can we just get to Steve's question now?
Yes, the
Because he
question
just wanted
was-
to have an illustration up there, and now Steve, you
Yes,
wanted to make
thank
a
you.
comment about that?
well, the only comment I was going to make was I don't want to jeopardize some of the things we've done with the CRA and the money we're getting and so on by getting out of the CRA, crossing lines of CRA, and so on.
Right.
So I'm simply asking. All I was asking was to describe for me from the old CRA map that I had up there a minute ago. Not old, but there are things called the redevelopment area, the town center, the urban core, and if we're really going to, yeah, I guess this has been kind of floating around the back of my mind for quite a while, and part of it was the discussions we had on small town charm, so on
Sure.
and so on. If there are parts of the city we can protect with, and I don't want to rezone things, but if you called it a small town charm area, zones for historic small town, the kinds of the visions we have, and maybe that's where you're going with this thing. But if we can do it inside the areas we've already determined to be part of what we're funding, then I think we save ourselves money and we save ourselves some issues. So all I asked was the industrial area. If Oak Creek is the small river down there at the bottom,
yep,
and Tennessee's right below that, correct?
yes.
Right. That
This is the industrial area. It falls within the larger CRA area. However, the sub-district that we're talking about is further defined by the the conceptual master plan for downtown.
well
So they're one and the same,
on the west side of 41.
Mm-hmm.
On the west side of 41.
right?
Okay, Tennessee Street.
Right?
No, other way. Other
No?
way. That's Tennessee's to your left. Right?
Yeah.
Correct.
This,
No.
Is
that's
that,
industrial.
That's 41, right?
Tennessee goes left.
No,
That's
this is
railroad
41
tracks.
right here.
That's 41. That's
This is
a horrible
41.
map.
This is Tennessee Street, and this is industrial.
Okay. So it's all inside the CRA. What
Yes.
we're talking about. All right.
Yes.
Now that area has commercial businesses, has industrial, and it has some what I would consider to be historical, or at least property that ought to be saved for small town charm. Is it that mixed?
I'm not sure on the later. It definitely has the commercial and the industrial uses.
All right. So I guess I'm trying to get back to the point of, are all those pieces considered inside the parameters of the CRA that we currently define it?
The problem is, there is the boundary of industrial streets. And I'm going to go back to this slide real quick. Actually, this isn't the best slide to see it. If I go back to the concept plan, that staff is using to direct us in guiding applicants for uses downtown. This was adopted as part of the comprehensive plan for these different subject areas. District 11, which is the subject area that we're talking about, falls within this triangle piece. The issue that we have found when you read the legal description of this area, it stops. It is bounded on the west by Industrial Street.
Right.
So therefore, all of these liner properties here that are adjacent to the railroad are not currently part of that.
Right.
So when I talk about expanding, staff has presented to you the concept of expanding this district to include those liner buildings on the western portion of Industrial Street.
And I think that's important. That's an
Yes.
important thing for us to talk about. But as we go forward, is the CRA as is currently outlined,
Right.
the definition of the CRA, if you expand the CRA, does it do anything to the funding work that we've done for the downtown?
Well, and I think that question is directly on point and one I was going to address. And that is, council needs to remember that the area in which we expect to spend our $16 million is basically an area on Old 41 between Dean Street and the river or Terry. And a couple of blocks east and west of there. That's where we expect to spend the funds. However, the capture area, as I call it, for the redevelopment area, where all the revenue is coming from, is much larger because we are able to take advantage of some of the developments that are happening in North Old 41, the new residential areas. We've also included, at council's direction, some of the areas south, including the racetrack area, so that as they develop, we will get that growth to help us fund the changes.
That's my question.
All right. So that's what. So when you say the CRA, it's not all one area. The redevelopment area, capture area is much larger, so we can capture more revenue to pay off debt. But the actual area to create improvements is, again, basically between Dean and at most Terry Street, and then a couple of blocks east and west of there.
What I didn't want to do was create a different zoning today, a different framework today of what we're working on, and void the agreement we have for the $16 million.
Okay, a valid concern. I will tell you that what we're talking about now, in my opinion, would be, and I am recommending that we do cross over and pick up the west side of Industrial in order to do this, but you are not looking at additional redevelopment improvements along there. We're just trying to include it in the area so that, again, it won't have anything to do with the county funding.
Okay.
All right.
Thank you.
You're just recommending changing the uses for the future.
The zoning.
That's correct.
Which
The
you could
zoning.
do anywhere in the city,
Correct.
right?
Correct, you can.
Right.
Thank you.
But the major issue here, as Jen has indicated, is do you still want to allow for industrial uses in that area, okay? Or should we try to move to a more small-town charm
Well,
kind of
I think
atmosphere?
I mean, that's really where the rubber meets. Go ahead.
Okay.
No, where the rubber meets the road, because what's happening now is that people they're trying to derive income from their properties, which they're allowed to do. They should want to do. Even the Shangri-La right now is temporarily wanting to do things, but the problem that puts the city in, I think, and there's some tension there, is that, all right, well, if you're going to do that, I mean, that's not consistent with the vision, even of the vision of the Shangri-La. It shouldn't even be consistent with that. And so they're like, well, we're going to have to rent this to somebody who wants to store boxes and crates
Sure.
outside in a fenced-in area. And you're like, well, that would be okay if it was only going to happen for a week or a month, but how is that going to help this area redevelop if people are allowed to do that, and some brave soul comes in there and wants to actually do what you want them to do?
Right.
They're not going to do that. I mean, so I think that's the problem that we have there, is that there is some natural tension there. And I really sympathize with the people who are like, hey, look, I already have a construction office here. I just want to use this lot behind here to do some stuff. And you're like, no.
Absolutely.
Well, and of course they're like, well, what do I do with it? And, you know, I'm not gonna put an art colony there right now, but
Right.
so it's a really tough situation, and I think somehow we need to figure out how to incentivize that or to take the hurt out of that. I don't know.
Absolutely, and that's the exact reason we're here to have that discussion is what does flex space mean? And what is your vision for that area? And how does it mirror those of the business or the property owners?
Yes, Jen.
Thank you. I know that what other cities have done, and it's very successful, and I think it does feed into the vision that we have for that flex space. And you're, like you said, you're very visual. This helps too to get the point across, is that, you know, a lot of warehouses that are defunct or sitting empty now, you get a co-op type of artists that, you know, the welder that needs a bigger spot to be able to create, or the painter that does large canvas work needs that type of, you know, facility with the large ceiling. And we've got a couple of buildings down there that I think would lend themselves to something beautiful like that. You could get your glass blower and a potter, and, you know, they could all co-op in one large building. So I think the vision is spot on.
Yeah, and as business people, you know, there's a vision and then there's a practicality. I mean,
Sure.
And I think that's a wonderful vision, and that, wow, if it happened tomorrow, it'd be great, or whenever. But there is then, as you're that property owner, it sits there and goes, really, glass blower? That's who I got to go find?
Mm-hmm.
I mean,
Well,
that's
maybe
tough.
not.
That really is tough. I mean, and so we are, you know, any vision that we come up here with today, it really boils down to this: is it going to be something that the private sector is going to want to do?
Absolutely.
I mean, and if it isn't, well, we can do this all day long. It's not going to matter, unless we're going to build it, and
Right.
we're not. So I think that we need to make it to where whatever we decide to do with this area, it's got to be something that people are like, yeah, I want to do that there, because
Absolutely.
in exchange for that, the city's going to let me do this. That's what needs to happen.
You're absolutely right. And so by identifying some of those flex uses, that's one way that we can pursue this. I want to also introduce Matt and Arlene, who are going to dive into a couple more layers that may even complicate this vision a little further. So,
Good.
because that's what we do here.
I know.
Right. So let's go into a little more details as far as the Shangri-La Resort and the potential of right-of-way vacation that could either, you know, foster or interrupt some of these ideas. So we'll continue with that.
Can I
So
just make one quick point?
absolutely.
I just, you know, celebrated our 15th wedding anniversary over the weekend, and we were down in the Keys. And one of the places, thank you, that we went to at Isla Mirada,
Sure.
and it, you know, when you say artist community, you know, we have the artist cottages, and that's great. Not that that's a lot of space, but when you think of some of, you know, what we're looking at here and talking about, we pulled into this place in Isla Mirada, you know, and parking out back and all that, and I know parking would be an issue, but literally within, I would say 500 by 500 feet, you probably had, I don't know, 15 or 20 different businesses within small, another,
Sure.
you know, all kind of feeding off of each other. So when you say not that that's a vision, but a part of that, I think, is letting other businesses feed off of other businesses.
Spot on. Absolutely.
So that's
Okay.
All right,
So
good.
let me introduce
Carry on.
Matt first. Okay.
Jen, thank you.
Oh, you're welcome.
Sorry
I'll
to
be
throw you
back.
off.
So.
Matt Feeney again. I think Jen started to really touch on how this plays or doesn't play into the vision or future vision of the area, and that's all the planning talk I'll be making. As mentioned, the Shangri-La folks had previously expressed an interest some time ago in the city vacating portions of Industrial Street and Tennessee Street, as well as Kentucky Street. The reason being, what you see in this aerial is everything in light blue is under the ownership of the Shangri-La Resort. So they're looking to kind of consolidate their campus, if you will, for future plans. That may play in the vision of an artist colony if there's no longer any interconnectivity. To that end, they're extremely interested in this portion of right-of-way along Kentucky Street, which is a window for the city onto Oak Creek. We do have a future, very soon upcoming Oak Creek dredging project. Oak Creek in the past was a bit of a choke point, I believe, in the '95 floods for water conveyance. So there is a need for the city to have access to that creek. We have very limited access. Most of it's held in private ownership for us to be able to access it, to maintain it. So as we looked at these requests for right-of-way vacation, we noticed that these two properties here that are denoted in orange are also held by the Shangri-La campus. They amount to about a half an acre. And so one of the thoughts that Public Works had is moving forward, if the city council were willing to re-entertain these ideas of vacation of some of this right-of-way or portions of it, maybe not the whole thing, that it may be reasonable to look at partnering with the Shangri-La in them essentially deeding these properties that are bifurcated by the railroad from their main campus, as they would provide a window back for the city onto Oak Creek to be able to maintain it, as well as for public access. Currently, we do have a important drainage ditch that is just to the east of these properties that we maintain. So there is a little bit of public connectivity there, but if we were to lose this piece on the north side in some form of swap, it seemed maybe commensurate that we work with those folks on that portion. So it's just an idea for consideration. Arlene and I did speak to the attorney, I believe, that handles the Shangri-La properties, just to verify that any sort of discussion of this would be appropriate. They seemed open to the idea, so we thought we would bring it before council.
Okay. Council, any comments?
I think we should move on that.
On the part so far as the trade for the small top blue piece with the orange piece?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Not the other part of the road.
Right.
Right,
Just that
good.
one.
Yeah, we've only been working on this forever. So, and I don't know, there's a whole long history behind this about stopping and starting. And are they still interested also? They were interested in that extension that goes across the railroad tracks, not the entire great big road, but the little short parcel, if you could point.
Whereabouts?
Okay, yeah. No, not that one. Go down on the larger parcel. They want to. There you go. That section right there. That's another one that they had already previously asked to redo. I mean, I wouldn't have any objection on either one of those, but I think that again, I got to go back to okay, what are you going to use it for?
I would say
until they're ready to answer that question. I don't know.
In our discussions, I don't want to leave you with a false. I'm going to stop pointing the pointer at everyone. A false sense that they felt this was a fair or even consideration. They were
sure.
just open to the notion of it. What seemed to come out in the discussions is that they are very interested in the city considering deeding this portion over, which is understandable. It's right next to the main campus. It is important for us. It's a connection to Oak Creek. But they're also interested in the vacation of the entire portion of Industrial Street along their right-of-way, as well as Tennessee Street along their right-of-way. And, those portions do play into what Jennifer was speaking of. If you vacate that area, then you have a pretty contiguous property ownership that may not lend itself to this industrial area. And you've pretty well, closed the area off for connectivity. But one thing, what I seem to be hearing from the council is maybe to approach them that these two, based on the nature of them, are worth an equal amount, even though by acreage they may not be the same.
Or let's just start there. Council, are you okay with negotiating with just those two parcels, right? Like Bill suggested? Yeah, fine. All right, what else you got? We need to talk about this further?
No, all I was going to do is give you a little bit of an update of the discussions we've been having with the Shangri-La on the usage of their property and how those are coming along. And to just reiterate some of the, they do have of course, the property ownership here. They are in active search of as they're moving through the renovation process, they are talking about active searches of who might be appropriate uses for these properties. And in speaking with their consultants on several occasions, they actually are looking for direction from the city council, from the city, on those uses that they should be pursuing. For example, there have been other previous inquiries from folks to use these properties, and that's where this discussion came in of importance, because they have a property ownership here, and they had a potential user for the property here that may have not been what we were looking for, the interest in the downtown, but it was a use by right here. That's what we wanted to clarify. So that particular use could go to use by right. They wanted to then cross over the property and use this for some storage space, which, as Jennifer showed you, is the flex space. So that's why we're talking about the importance of this property here and the connectivity of the two having similar uses. The reason that this is of importance to them, just to show that the consultant for the Shangri-La asked me to point out to the council, was that this building right here is their spa area, and they are concerned about maintenance work or noise going on while the spa activities are occurring, and that was the importance to them there. I wanted to point out here, it's kind of hard to see, but if you see right here, this is an image of Google Earth, and if you zoom on Google Earth and look at these properties, this has been a point of discussion with the Shangri-La and also the property owner right here, who are the Quins. You will see a bus navigating its way to make a left-hand turn. So some of the discussion points with the improvements that we will be doing with the TIF-like program with the county is Matt will be looking at landscape and media improvements. It is going to be necessary for us to look at maintaining that this become a right turn only, no matter what we occur with the street vacation of this property. So with looking at that, we were trying to look at different perspectives. We also spoke with the property owners of Shangri-La, knowing that their interest was the street vacation. They've had different ideas that they've thrown around. We did express to them that before we were to move forward with any of this portion, that council would need to see some plans of what they were looking to do. Were they going to make a new grand entryway to the resort at that location? That's been talked about. Reserving some sort of smaller roundabout portion or entryway into the facility. But we would need to see some drawing or vision for that before we could pursue that. We've also asked them to begin considering, if they were looking for a street vacation, to look at Packing House, which I think was right about here. If we are going to require this to be a right turn only, we do need an access way for a left turn ability at some point through this property. So they are open to discussing that with us. They do have concerns because it does then portion off this property right here. But at the same time, they're looking for direction before they pursue other leasing options for their properties from the city to help direct them. And I think they would be willing to work in partnership with us if we were to pursue certain uses or create an art district or a different flex space, that we would be able to encourage them to those users.
Okay. All right. Yeah, Carl.
So is it fair to say that the council is comfortable with staff kind of stepping back, taking a larger view of this particular area, again, outside of the smaller vacation to the north, define the uses, perhaps come up with a program to incentivize people to come in and use those buildings the way we would like them to use it, work with the owner to determine how feasible that is for them, and basically just see if we can kind of mold the entire picture into something that's good for the owner as well as the city? Is that
Said very
fair?
well. Said very well.
Well, you call it flex space for a reason. I mean, so I think that you do need to be flexible, but I would just caution you that if you do bring something before council, is what you're trying to do, just bring it before council, and let's be sure that it's not something that's going to just contribute to, I would think, the long-term vision of the area right there, because it's, there's, like I said, this is difficult because there's two sides to this. I mean, you want the long-term vision to be fulfilled, but at the same time, you don't want to cause an economic hardship that has the exact result of what you see there, nothing.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think that there's a way to make that work, and I think that if we really let you figure out some way to incentivize what happens there, I mean, there's some ways that you could make it way easier for people to do certain things in that particular area. So,
Ben,
Yes, Bill.
When is your next scheduled meeting with the Shangri-La people?
Currently, they're out of the country right now, and then when they come back, they're going to be getting in touch with me again.
I would suggest communications is, if they're away, that's fine, but as soon as they come back, you should get in contact with them directly and move, don't wait, do it.
Yeah, and you know what? It's a strange thing because you would think that the Shangri-La would be really interested in seeing this vision fulfilled. That would be a better neighbor for a Shangri-La than an industrial area would for the Shangri-La. So
Well, and
we're going to kind of count on them to kind of help us make this vision
And I
occur.
think that came to light when they were actually petitioned with an option of a use that may not have been the best for the moving forward of our vision as well as Shangri-La's vision. And I think that came forward to them as we reviewed it and spoke with their consultant about it. And at that point, it came back as, could the city assist us with telling us what would be, planning-wise, the vision of what would be the best for the space.
Yeah, I think all I have to ask them is, who do you want your neighbor to be? Yeah, and then, so that's probably what you ought to do as well. So maybe, okay. All right, good. I know it seems like we kind of muddled around, did nothing, but I think this is something that it's going to take a little muddling to get.
It is, and there's a lot of moving targets in this piece. That's why we wanted to familiarize with what we're working with, not only negotiations with Shangri-La, but also with the issue of the two different zoning districts. Again, this whole area falls within the TIF, so there's no confusion about that. But with the zoning, on this side, you have the sub-district of the industrial. On the west side of Industrial Street, you have straight light industrial zoning. So in the past, Shangri-La has been very confused too, why on one side of the road they're allowed to do one use and on the other they're not, vice versa. So again, making it consistent throughout that whole sub-district by expanding that sub-district 11 to the west.
Yeah, I think that would simplify it. I don't cancel. Yeah.
So,
Okay, good.
Great.
What's next?
Thank you. Let me see. Development patterns. So we are going to bring Jay Sweet up to talk about development patterns and how it affects Lemon Tree and the adjacent property owners.
I'm going to let, for the record, J Suite Community Development. I'm going to let Jen click because I'm impaired that way. And I'm going to do a little bit differently than because of the discussion we just had. One of the questions that has happened about what we should do down there is whether or not to have a roundabout. And in those discussions, there's, I think, several locations you could have one. One of them is at Dean Street. And if we were to look at Dean Street, where it would be just a three-way street roundabout, it wouldn't have to be quite as big. You would need some property from the Shangri-La folks. On the other hand, and there would be some construction challenges because it's where Oak Creek is. So basically, you'd probably have to build some sort of retaining wall. On the other hand, what a view as a grand entrance looking down the creek as you come into the city. So that an opportunity that could present itself. And if you were interested in that, that was something that we would want to negotiate and talk with the Shangri-La folks at the same time. That being said, we have the Lemon Tree property, and we have Sheer Unity, which is the building there in the middle. It's the one building downtown that has sort of redeveloped in the way that we, I think, have envisioned what should happen down there. And they have issues. One of their issues is that during season, when we are very successful in the park, they don't have any place to park. Their clients can't get in and out. And one of the reasons they can't is because of the way the traffic patterns are. And in talking with them, they have come into staff, and they were interested in entering into an agreement with the city to have a cross-access easement where we would get rid of the two driveways on 41 at the Lemon Tree property, move their driveway, or they would move it, and we would share a driveway so they could have parking that would be more efficient for their customers. And the alleyway would then be opened up also and improved to provide access from Ragsdale or the New Pennsylvania to the Old Pennsylvania, so, because of what happens in Old 41 during season and during weekend events. which is also one of their busiest times. They are extremely successful salon. I forget exactly, but they were ranked among the top 500 in the country. Very, very successful. They have just entered into a new lease that they have told us about. They now have an 8-year lease, so they're going to be there for a long time. They're preparing to make improvements to the building, some landscaping and other things, but this access becomes an issue. We talked with the property owner, which is also the Quinns, and as we talked to them, of course, all the discussion about a roundabout came up. Quinn suggested, and we said, well, if we'll bring this forward. Would you be interested in swapping the property to the south for the property to the north? They're about equal in size. They're both commercial. They're both on the corner. And in that case, it puts him in a situation to take care of his client or his tenant, and then would give the city the corner for additional right-of-way if it's needed for a roundabout.
I think we can deal with that one right now. Do you anyone interested in doing that?
No.
No. Okay.
Okay.
What's next?
That's easy.
I just get this sense up here sometimes, you know?
Can I ask a question, though? I'm just curious, if the Quinns own the property to the south, why wouldn't they help out their client by allowing them to use that property then for parking?
Because the way that the building is oriented, it would become very costly to do that. That building everything's oriented to the north in that building, all the accesses, and that's where the customers come in, and it doesn't flow because of the way that it is.
Okay.
So.
Now, however, before you go further on this, the other thing that they wanted to talk about was so far as is moving some of the entrance points or redesigning the alley and stuff like that.
Right.
I mean, I for one would be willing to look at that.
Right.
And look at some idea in that regard, because it may be something that benefits. Council, would that be okay to take a look at?
That would be great.
No?
Okay.
All right.
Yes.
Okay.
So,
What about the idea of, are you interested in pursuing conversations about a roundabout at Dean Street?
I personally, I think it would be awesome to do that, because that area is so in trouble all the time. I mean, people, no matter how crowded everything gets, everybody tries to go out that way, and it's really impossible at this point. I think it's really interesting, and I think you do a couple of things that you kind of solve maybe the problem of people being able to enter onto the highway there. And then plus you actually create that feature. You do 2 in 1, because we've always wondered, you can't put a stoplight there because it's too close to the other stoplight. And so then you try to discourage people from using the roads, or you make it to where people can do it and it looks great. So I would like to look at that. But anyway, what would you?
Sorry, which location?
Dean Street.
Yes. Thank you.
Dean Street. Yeah, so are
Yeah,
you
me
interested
too.
in
I think
looking at that?
Yes.
May I think that's a fantastic. When I saw this, I thought that's awesome, because when we were talking about the roundabout being at Pennsylvania, and that being the welcome to downtown, you've arrived. You've already driven by the Shangri-La, which is one of our most historic features. So I think this is awesome, fantastic.
Yeah, and I know it's tight right there, and I know it'll take some doing, but I think that whenever that happens, I think there's opportunity for creativity. There's something really cool you can do there, and sometimes the more tight and constricted things are, the better it looks. I mean, it just does. So, I'd
Now,
be interested to see what you guys.
Is
could
that
come
the
up with.
consensus of council to
Council?
look at Dean Street?
Yes,
Well,
sir.
first off, to do a roundabout and then to do it at Dean?
Yeah, Mike.
I'm not a big fan of roundabouts, but in that location, I think it'd be more doable. One of the big things is the pedestrians and bicycles. Roundabout, you have cars constantly moving. There is no stopping. So you have the access of the people trying to get across the road safely. That's my only concern there. But being a 3-way connection, if they're on the west side, it's nonstop for the pedestrians. So that would help out some, but still crossing Old 41 might be problematic. But I'd like to see something to, I don't know about the lighted crosswalks, because a lot of cars don't see them as it is anyway. But
There are very creative ways to deal with the pedestrian crossing, even with the roundabouts, is that they put these little like walkable islands so that the cars are
Stopping
still
point.
moving, but the pedestrians can get to this little spot and be able to wait for, so there are ways that people are doing that.
Yeah, we had
So-
that gentleman come in from the
Yes, we
roundabout
did.
king that invented
Yes.
every roundabout in the United States and
Yes.
the world. That showed us all that. Yeah.
Even if you look at the roundabout we have there, that's what you see, the walkway. There's a sidewalk where you can sort of stop,
Yes, there you go.
catch your breath, make sure you get across the next one before
Exactly.
you get run over. And they are designed that way.
Awesome.
So there's opportunities to do that. Although it's not part of my presentation, I would ask you to consider the concept, though, if you to create a historical area. One of the things that could happen is you have the Dixie Moon there at the corner, and if that was relocated, that would also open up area to make this a more viable, practical thing. And I believe the owners of that property would probably be
Open to that.
receptive
yes.
to be able to relocate that property. So just as when we get to that next phase here in the presentation, that might be something to think about.
And when you say relocate, preserve?
Preserve,
and
yes,
remote- yeah.
yes.
Which, by the way, might be quite a challenge given the condition of the building.
That's going to have to be one piece of plaster at a time. That's going to be tough.
One of the other
Like
things
Lincoln's
that,
cabin.
as we look at development patterns, that I
That'd be
think,
some-
sorry.
I'm so sorry.
Yes, go ahead.
I was thinking out loud and processing when you said that we could potentially move it. Would that be something that, I know you said a historic district, but actually moving the, I always call it Dixie Moon, it's always going to be Dixie Moon building, like to the Levin property or someplace, where it still has that frontage because it is such a historical feature.
Well, that was actually what I wanted to talk about briefly next with the development patterns.
Yeah.
We have focused a lot on Old 41. A one street downtown doesn't really work. We need to focus somewhat on how we expand the development patterns onto Front and onto Felts. And as we do that, we need to look at activities and other opportunities of how you do that. And I think the opportunity to do some of this is really going to present itself quickly as we get into the construction of 41, because you have uses that are going to be impacted, and if people all of a sudden know that you can get around by Front Street, or you can get around by driving down Felts and come across, it's going to help. And to that end, we haven't discussed what the ultimate use of the Lemon property would be yet.
Mm-hmm.
But during construction, for instance, it's probably not the best place to have a farmer's market because it's all going to be torn up. But you could put the farmer's market on Front Street and signs at Abernathy, Pennsylvania, Kentucky that direct people. And if you start planning it now, where you have put half of it back there and half of it front now, by the time people get into construction, they'll get used to looking there. I think the same thing happens over on Felts. I think there's opportunities as we look at the development patterns on the Felts, where one of the areas where we might suggest a historical area with some water features for our drainage is in such a way that you start to attract people to that 3-street pattern. And that really blends into the Complete Streets program, where bicyclists may not want to be on 41 because that road would be somewhat constrained with the width of the right-of-way, but they would feel very comfortable and safe going down Front and on Felts. So those are opportunities to think about as you look at this overall development pattern.
There was a proposal quite some time ago. I think Bob Bachman has been a proponent of this for a long time. And I'm not suggesting this, it's just an idea to think about. I think all ideas ought to come out on the table. Was to right where, just as soon as you get across the river heading south, was to split 41 up, and it would be one lane or one way going down this way and the other way going in this way. That way you create this traffic pattern that actually circulates and brings businesses down onto Felt Street. So it kind of rotates. So that, and what that roundabout then plays into that. It becomes this roundabout that's where it splinters off, and you go down and you go down on Felt Street to go to the north, and you go down 41 to go south. And that takes care of a lot of things that go on. Now, there's a lot to hate about that. I mean, there really is for a lot of different people. But you know what? It's not a completely off the wall idea.
It's not, but I'll tell you a couple things. There are cities that have done that, and some with great success, some with not so much. But one of the things that is true is we talk about the road diet, making the road a little narrower, slowing traffic. There's roundabouts as traffic calming devices rather than traffic control devices. The reason for that is that as people drive a little slower, they can look a little more, they see more of the shops, they see more of things that are inviting to them, more opportunities for them to go by. If you have a shop on a 50-foot wide lot on 41 and people going 45 miles an hour, they're not going to notice you as well if they're doing 30 miles an hour, and or if they're even going a little slower and they're enjoying the landscape and everything else, all of a sudden the shop stands out. And so as we look at those development patterns, we want to do that. The other thing is that one of the things that we did in the TIF was we expanded the area. And one of the rationale how we did that was everything that you do in this core has a ripple effect outside it. So even though you're cleaning up the core, the ripple effect goes into the housing that's immediately adjacent to it. One of the things in the development patterns we need to make sure we do is maintain that complete street connectivity so that that continues to happen, so that we get that full ripple effect into the rest of the community.
Okay.
I think you've answered my questions.
Carl?
Yeah, if I could go back. So Jen, could you get me back to the slide that we were looking at for quite a while there? No, I want to go to the Abernathy property. So when we talk about the potential for a historic village, the question has been raised whether or not this site, which is owned by the city right now, would be an appropriate location for that. And Jay had indicated with maybe with a central water feature, and then you would place historic buildings around that on this particular block. It would draw the traffic in away from Old 41 and not keep everything clustered on Old 41, and it would actually expand that historic area and people using it. Councilmember Martin indicated, or asked the question about the possibility of the Levin property, which is the piece of property that is just north of Community Hall. And I don't know how the council feels about that, but again, that's an area that is currently land bank for economic development, and so it really kind of depends on what the council's views are, and that is the Feltz area right there.
It was just.
She was
I
just.
wasn't married to that. I was just.
Right. Well, but
out
we would
loud with
love
the
to get some
excitement
direction
of,
on
that wasn't in our packet to even be thinking about moving Dixie Moon property. So,
Right.
I understand the historic district. I think that the Historical Society, the Preservation Board would be thrilled to hear that this is even on our scope. So that's awesome.
Okay. So is council comfortable with looking at either this site or, my personal recommendation would be to allow this to continue for an economic development purpose, paying taxes.
The Levin property.
The Levin property here that we're looking at.
Yes.
And then use the Abernathy property, again, if council wants us to move forward with this historic district concept, to do that on the Abernathy property, where we can use that jointly, not only for the historic properties, but also the water feature could also be part of our drainage system. Not that I'm here to design that, there's other people that do that, but
Rain gardens.
just a thought.
Well, that's the only thing that worries me is that, when you start talking, let's make a historical place to put all these houses there. Okay, well, who's going to do that? Who's going to do the houses? Who's going to pay for it? Who's going to remodel it? What are they going to be? What are the uses going to be? How much is that going to cost? How long is it going to take? Are we going to be building this edifice to something that never gets ever completed? Because it takes a long time to do these things, especially when you're talking buildings like the Dixie Moon, which, wow, is that going to take some work?
And also typically takes fundraising in order to make renovations happen to particular buildings.
So being somebody who would like this to happen like sooner than later, that piece of property right there, I always thought that was going to be parking.
Parking, yeah, that's.
I thought parking. Because when you look around the areas there and what's being envisioned as just not even a block over. Well, I guess a block over. almost adjacent to that, there's somebody who's going to be needing a lot of parking. That the lot where the food truck is on right there, they're going to be needing a lot of parking. So I kind of think that as that area develops, that's one of the areas that you're going to have. And if you're going to just say, okay, we're going to put, be a repository for older houses, there are other places that you can do that. And I would much rather see them interdispersed throughout the community than create this clustering. This is my own opinion.
Yeah, 'cause as it is now, they do a walking tour to see a lot of the historic properties. If you put them all in one place, there goes a walking tour.
Yeah, that's just
just a lot
let's just
shorter
go there.
walk,
Yeah.
that's
So that's the only thing that bothers me. The other thing I think that is interconnected in this with what we were talking about was that I think as much as possible, I mean, there's this temptation always on 41 on your main corridors to let's buy this and let's buy that and let's put this and that. We should try, even if we do something on the community hall property, I think that as much as possible, that frontage property, we should reserve that and design that to be businesses. I mean, things that people do, and so we should be able to create that on the road parking, that sidewalk, that little overhang, and that little business right there, even if it's only for 40 feet deep or something like that, and then have behind that have the parking and have the government businesses or whatever you want to do. Just even if we can incorporate it with us and we become tenants, or where we say fine, do that. That whole corridor, 41 corridor, it needs to look kind of like a nice little city. I mean, it really does. And so the only way to do that is to reserve those properties up front for that purpose, I think, right? I mean,
agree.
as much as possible.
I agree.
Yeah. So anyway,
All right, so council have other thoughts, comments?
anything?
All right, so the Abernathy property not to be used for any type of village, use it for something that's going to,
I think we need to use it to enhance the ability and incentive to use it to incentivize the redevelopment of that area. Other than historical, I think that it needs to be something more practical than that.
and is that?
In my opinion, is that okay,
council
council?
direction, or?
Is that all right?
Yes.
Okay.
We good?
All right.
Okay. Great, that answers that question. All right, who's next? You're
I
up.
feel like Vanna White. Next is actually John Gucciardo. He was going to speak a little more about the historical village, but moving on.
Oh yeah, come on.
I guess there's no reason to go back over that ground. We covered it pretty well. Obviously, there is a difference between a historic district and a historic village, but I think that council's made it pretty clear as to what their preferences are with regard to that property in particular. We'd be looking elsewhere if we were going to be pursuing a historic village.
Yeah, I don't think there was any predisposition on council's part against the idea.
Understood.
Just that piece of
Just not at
property.
that location.
Yeah.
Understood. So we're going to switch gears a little bit and go to the government center. And Jen has already given you kind of a brief overview of the property that we're talking about. Obviously, it's off of Old 41 going back towards through the community hall, the existing community hall substation, back to the church property that the city has purchased. And this has come up in recently in the past to council because obviously the joint project that we're working on with the county had to do with the new library facility. Their consultants identified that property also as being the potential probably first choice for a new library facility because of its proximity to the downtown and availability. The idea that we'd like to get some further direction on from council today is whether or not the idea of I don't want to call it a government campus, but a civic campus might be appropriate in that location. We've seen similar things done throughout the county. For example, in the West District of the Sheriff's Office, a few years back, they needed to build a new facility for the sheriff substation for that district. What they did, the county did, was they incorporated the land that they had purchased for the sheriff substation facility, as well as various other municipal or governmental functions. So the tax collector, I believe, is there. Elections office, I believe, has a facility there. So the idea would be that we could, in one form or another, and again, this we don't know what the pieces would be, but the concept is what we'd like to get some feedback on, whether or not those lands would be appropriate for that type of multi-use governmental facility. In our case, again, depending on what the county consultants come back and what the council decides to do, could be anchored by the new library facility. Obviously, the timing would be tricky, but we could work through those logistics. The timing as far as staff is concerned in terms of how fast we can move on those kind of particulars, I think you all are aware, but I want to remind you that we still have some current obligations in terms of uses at Community Hall that take us through the spring, but we do have budgeted, and we talked about this a little bit during the budget workshop, we'll be going forward with a demolition of the Community Hall facility and potentially the church facilities sometime around the spring. Obviously, the church, the way it is now, is probably not, their use will be over after the first of the year, and there are some physical issues with that building where we'd like to take that down sooner rather than later, so we'll be moving ahead with that. You'll have basically, other than the tree, obviously, which we're going to try to save and work around, which we will save and work around, an open slate in terms of potential future uses. So we want to throw that idea out. Is this something that you'd be willing to consider that we should put into the mix? And if so, to what extent?
Council?
Mayor,
Yes, Steve,
besides the library, what other government buildings were we thinking of?
Well, again, looking at the template that the county used previously, it could potentially be the elections office, tax collector. I don't know I know that they have recently made some changes down here in the southern part of the county. I don't know what their long-term obligations are. I don't know what they would consider partnering with us for, but anything would be potential, except, and I do want to point this out for anyone who might think that we're going in a different direction, it is not the recommendation of staff at this time that a city hall be located there. I've heard that described before, but that's not what we're looking at.
Good. All right.
And why not? Just a question.
Well, I don't think
really.
City Hall really draws a lot of people. We want to draw people into downtown.
And that is one of the key functions, is that what we're talking about is generation of traffic, generation of public interest, and I'm not sure that City Hall would be that. There's also the question of limited space. A City Hall facility, obviously, this is functional the way it is, but it is cramped. So you'd be talking about something considerably bigger than this if you were starting from scratch, I would imagine.
Go up.
Okay. Yep. Yes.
I mean, I just think it's important to kind of, I'm all for the concept, 100%. I think it's important, though, that we identify, is the Lee County Sheriff substation, do they want to be there? Does the supervisor of elections want to be there? All for, but we need to really kind of think of anchor tenants.
Yeah, and again, other than the library, which we know is in the mix from the discussions we had with the consultant, we haven't really approached the other entities about their willingness. What we do know is that they've showed that template works for them. They do that in other places. I'm sure it would depend on what kind of long-term obligations they have right now with their current facilities, how flexible they are in terms of what space they would need, how much space they would need. But the idea is that we already know that the concept works for them, at least if the conditions are correct.
When I think of like the old Lee County Courthouse and the Collier County Complex down in East Naples, down near Tin City, there's a lot of different entities there, and I would disagree. I mean, that draws people.
Well, the right kind of facilities, obviously, yes. City Hall, not so much, at least in our estimation, about what kind of traffic it would generate.
Yeah, and I'm not opposed to having City Hall down there. My mind's wide open on that. Maybe join that campus, if you will.
Yeah, thank you. Janet?
Thank you. I think that definitely the library, but also I think that we need to have meeting space, small meeting space, like the Historical Society uses Community Hall. We have many groups that use it, so we need to, remember that they need that space too, and maybe a small theater. I think that could be something that would go very well in what we're looking at. And then a place that I know from just my visits there that does draw lots of traffic is planning and zoning. And I don't know if, in code enforcement, maybe, that's the first steps of moving our community government to there. But I am also not opposed to having City Hall and just having it all one-stop shopping and everybody is there. And comes down to probably, like you said, space and who else wants to be there. But I think that maybe we should look at that holistically.
Very good.
Thank you.
I think when we go through this process of, I think that there's a multi-use something that can go there, but I think that we have to remember what's across the street. I think that
Development, yeah.
no, across the street or across the street is
Our park.
is where the concerts happen and everything happens right there. And I think that it needs to be complementary to that. So I think that you can design something that, and perhaps there's a great public-private partnership that can happen here, so far as having some retail along the front with like
Yes.
even a gateway opening through there, so that people who are going to the concert can go across the street and there's a restaurant there or something else, and then it opens up into the courtyard and to where the library is, and that whole thing. So people go to the library, can also go to the coffee shop, and can go over here. I think there's a lot that can happen there if it's blended.
Using,
Well,
Same thing as what,
exactly.
it's almost using this, but putting the town hall building, this would be back on the church property. And so that you're feeding everyone down, past the banyan tree and to the rear.
And
But I
conceptually-
absolutely agree that, you look at that piece of property where Community Hall sits now, and you think, well, that should be a cafe right there. That should be someone who can have a large deck under the tree and take advantage of what goes on in the park, that people could sit there and enjoy that.
So some of the more government functions could be set back and allow for that
Yes.
space on 41 to be used for a higher best use.
Yes.
At the same time, maintaining that kind of open view. If you picture the tree there, it's kind of the entrance way to get you back towards the church property and the municipal functions.
Sounds like a
sure,
plan.
a good architect could take care of that.
Sounds like a
I
plan.
mean, that's the architect's dream right there, be able to
Yeah.
work with that piece of property.
Ben?
Yes, Bill, I'm gonna go to Bill and I'll come back to Steve. Not coming too far. Go ahead.
Excuse me. I remember the conceptual plan years ago in color. That was done 12 years ago. I don't know how long ago. But anyway, obviously we have this building, and
Actually, I'm betting this isn't it. There was one we did in
long time
2002,
ago. Yeah,
and there was an actual architectural rendering of a city hall.
that's correct. And I remember that.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
that didn't, whatever.
This is the 1995 one, right?
Yes.
Okay.
Hard to see on this slide.
Yeah, there was, I think 2002 or whenever we started to do this, there was a debate there about whether to go there or there. But there was an actual architectural rendering of
Yes,
a place.
I thought it was, at that time, I thought that was a reasonable thing to do, but obviously it didn't happen, so now we're backtracking to where we are. But,
Yeah.
the other fact is the cost of doing those buildings in big numbers, I would think, to do a modern complex. Do you have any idea how much that would cost?
No, again, at this point, we haven't drilled down that far, but we would be anticipating partners if we went down the path that we're,
Without partners, it's probably not feasible.
there you go.
Yeah, but I think we're in land use planning kind of an idea. What's your intent to use it for? Kind of like in the future, maybe not even tomorrow. Like, okay, and now Steve.
Yeah. I've been playing around with this Google Earth map, and it brings to mind a lot of things that have been said here. Because if you look at this from a global view, you've got some properties there. You've got some pieces of property there that have the potential to create a wonderful downtown. And I think a lot of what we're seeing here is heading that direction. I'm really uncomfortable with government center. I don't like the term. I'm not crazy about the whole idea, but if that brings people down, that's fine. If you look at Bamboo Village, and you talk about a water slide, or you talk about we're not even thinking about Bonita Coral, which has a historic and probably a branding that we could do something around water in that Bamboo Park area. But every time you go online and look at a small village, a small city, there is a city center and if you had something like a village square with pavers and a small gazebo, and every Sunday you had an event artists, musicians, however you want to put it together, all of a sudden you've got traffic downtown that you want to bring down for the small businesses. I guess the thing that struck me the most was if you can create a center city down there that's not necessarily the government, but it is designed for people. Riverside Park, and I keep going back to it, but we've got to look at Wonder Gardens as something that's extremely valuable to this city. And I recognize it's privately owned and it's been difficult. I'm scared to death that John's going to end up losing that property because he's on a short-term lease for all practical purposes. If we can create a butterfly garden, an ecological center to draw students, that's the kind of broader thinking I'd like for us to look at. And although the government center has appeal and it has an immediate use probably, I'm not sure that's exactly what I would like. I would certainly like the library down there, and I'd like to make sure we have small businesses. Though we need to look at this thing as a whole and not just one parcel as we've done. And maybe we have, but I don't think anybody said, pull up Google Earth sometime, just take a look at that square property, and there's maybe a half-mile square. It's got so much potential. We have 3 rivers running through this city. We haven't even talked about the waterways on this plan. And we got $100,000 allocated for something. I'm not sure what it's for yet. But if it's for visioning, let's get somebody in here who really wants to understand how we can use these properties, how we can get a hold of the ones we want, and move on. So thank you, Mr. Mayor.
All right, thank you. And Carl, did you have something to throw in there? Was it you? No. All right, yeah, hey.
May I? The reason I passed out the conceptual master plan back from 1995 is just that the city has in the past had visioning proposed to them. And that's something that we're looking at a greater whole, but that the idea of a concept of a community center, not necessarily government. I think we're just looking at collecting those, elaborating on more of our one-stop shopping for our citizens, in combining into one area. But I just wanted to pass this out, that this was something that was proposed back in '95, and it might be something that needs to be revisited, but not completely overhauled. So, as a conceptual idea.
Well, at this point in time, council, could we agree that we can envision that those 2 properties there, community hall property and behind there, as being some type of communal uses, which will include some type of public and private, and at this point, the library at least, and then actually have some private, some entrepreneurs in there as well. However we get that done, I mean, that gets us a little closer, right?
Well, and also the substation. I don't want to see us lose the substation down there.
No, okay, all right.
I think the private sector is really the key to what has to start first before I think that's more important to bring the tax base in that area. I understand all that you're talking about, but I really think the private sector, and how many inquiries do we get for Bamboo Village? Where are we with that, Carl? Do we have anybody interested from the private sector that's indicated they may be interested in something on
Yes.
Bamboo?
Yes, we do have interest from the private sector, but we have to get the RFP out first.
I understand.
Right.
I think that's so important because, Ben, I understand where you're coming from. Peter, Steve, all of you. It's wonderful to see the interaction that we're having, but the private sector is the key to the downtown. Without that private sector participation, we could have I believe that has to happen first, and more emphasis put on more contacts. For example, with the Shangri-La, with the same thing. We have to keep in contact with the private sector, the Shangri-La being the focal point, because if that blossoms, then we'll see some other positive things happen. But please, the private sector is vital, and I believe it'll happen. I just don't know when.
You know, I think there's an opportunity there when we start talking, redoing our community hall and the library. There's an opportunity there. There's entrepreneurs out there right now that are looking to do stuff with their money, and they may be willing to partner and to build that if in fact they can commercialize around that, make that part of that, make it a multi-use. I think there's a really good unique opportunity to do that, and that we can have both ways. So I don't know. other than that. Okay, where to next? We okay?
So tying it all together brings back the concept or the tool of complete streets. And hold with me one second here. Let me get to where we are. Some of you are very familiar with complete streets. Some of you may have heard of it, but not really familiar with what the basis is. To start off, Complete Streets is an initiative. It's a tool to retrofit and design current existing streets to be more safe, comfortable, and accessible to all users, ages, and abilities. And again, it's getting away from the car focus and looking more at pedestrian, bicyclists, transit riders, as well as motorists. Streets that are not complete tend to focus more on moving cars, and it limits mobility and deters basically other modes of transportation. So complete streets basically are designed to provide the safest access for all users, including motorcyclists, bicyclists, pedestrians, and transit riders. All users of all ages and ability are able to move safely throughout a corridor, an area, or a street. These slides I have to accredit Lee County. Lee County right now has had a complete streets resolution since 2009, and these are their these are their slides for complete streets on the lessons they've learned since 2009. So Andy Getch was kind enough to let me borrow them. These streets promote economic vitality. They save money. You're able to do more with less. It develops a sense of place, somewhere you want to go. And it also creates a sense of community. We've talked about some of these features, whether it be a roundabout or median enhancements. We've talked about completing our corridor through the different uses of streets. And we also understand that complete streets are conceptual and contextual in their nature. You have different contexts for streets based on whether they're rural, suburban, or whether they're downtown. And again, it depends on what your needs are on that street and the location. And it requires us to change our approach. You need to think about things differently. You need to think about all of the potential users for that street beyond the motor vehicle. And the nice thing about Complete Streets is it creates a foundation for you to link sustainability. We have a sustainability strategy here in Bonita, and incorporating that balance between our economic, social, and environmental resources is very vital. And one way to lay the foundation for this is a tool such as Complete Streets. And if you're looking for what that means, basically what makes a street complete, it has pedestrian facilities, bicycle facilities, transit facilities, street lighting, streetscaping, which includes our landscaping and different benches, fountains, enhancement that we've talked about that we want to include in our downtown redevelopment corridor. And it also includes on-street parking. So this may be a vehicle that we can look at to encourage more on-street parking rather than creating mass parking lots in downtown area that potentially could be used for other things. So it's just a concept. It's a tool that staff is looking to get your direction on if this is something that you would want to see a Complete Streets resolution drafted, if you want a presentation more in detail of something that we could use throughout the city. Again, Lee County has a resolution as well as the city of Fort Myers. Our jurisdiction, city corporate limits, don't end with the road. The road connects us between Collier County, Lee County, and so we would like our streets to offer our users that connectivity beyond our jurisdiction limits. So just looking to see your feelings about a Complete Streets potential resolution.
Council?
I'll make that motion.
I'll second that motion.
Okay, there's a motion and a second to
Create the resolution that
draft
we go on with the Complete Streets program. No, I don't want to think about it. I thought about it.
I have a question. All right, well, I'll wait till they get done talking first.
Yeah, I'm telling you.
Okay, that's what, yeah. Audrey's saying it would need to be
Are
an
you-
ordinance, not a resolution.
Okay.
I'm sorry.
I'll amend
I can work with
motion.
her.
amend my motion to an ordinance to join the Complete Street movement.
Second for discussion.
Okay, my question is, what does that do?
What does that do?
Yeah, in other words, my point is you can pass all the resolutions, ordinances you want. It's really about implementation.
Absolutely.
You don't need an ordinance or resolution if your intent and your goal and your plans reflect that.
Sure.
So what does this do?
This gives us a little teeth to be able to implement this, whether it be citywide, also for implementing our streets, the design of it downtown, to look at it contextual. So it would have to have those elements. Every street would have to have those elements based on the context of where that street is located.
So this ordinance would be part of our land development code?
Absolutely.
Okay, and it would actually, we would be inflicting it upon ourselves more than
Correct.
anybody else. Is
And
that
it will
correct?
come through in our Chapter 3 development standards.
May I, Mr. Mayor?
Oh, sure.
Just to your point.
Yeah.
Jen, if you, can you include, we've got we have an environmental sustainability plan, and it's working, it's on the path, and it's a 25, 30-year plan.
Absolutely.
Can you not incorporate complete streets into the strategy?
Absolutely.
As opposed to creating an ordinance?
And both.
Well, I'm saying instead of creating an ordinance.
You could, but we need to have it incorporated into the land development code to make those requirements mandatory.
Well, we don't have a mandatory sustainability strategy, but we're following it just the same.
Sure, absolutely.
I would ask you, and I'm going against the council, my second, but I guess I'd ask you to come back with a suggestion on how you incorporate it into the sustainability strategy.
Absolutely.
Rather than creating a different path, and let's get them integrated.
Well, there's twofold to my approach in this. The first is, as we pursue the Florida Green Building Coalition Green City designation, we actually obtain points for creating this type of ordinance. So, and also once you have the ordinance, it develops the path for those land development code amendments to include the principles of complete streets. So while we can include it into our sustainability strategy, which would be basically, because we're looking at it more broad, the teeth are applied through the land development code.
Yeah, I wouldn't have any objection to proceeding with it just in order so I could see
Absolutely.
what's in it, what it involves, what the ramifications are, what the fiscal ramifications are, what it's going to cost us to do and not do, that type of thing. I mean, so yeah, I have no objection to proceeding down the path. That doesn't mean that it's already been adopted.
Right.
That just means that
I'm going to draft something and bring
Yes.
it back to
you know, all I have
Please.
are those words right
Sure.
now. I'm,
Right.
you know,
Well,
so.
staff will take a little bit of
Oh, yeah.
another look at this and bring it back to council.
Well, would you also bring back the option of having integrated into the strategy instead of an ordinance? I understand the issues, but if you do bring
Yes,
both.
we will do that,
Yes.
sir.
Very good. That's the point. In the ordinance is one thing. The integrated strategy is really where the
I'd be
teeth are.
happy. My pleasure.
Okay. All right. There's a motion second. Any other discussion? Roll call, please.
Councilman Slakta.
Aye.
Mayor Nelson.
Aye.
Councilman Simmons.
Aye.
Councilman Gibson.
Aye.
Councilman Longcor.
Aye.
Councilman McIntosh.
Aye.
Councilwoman Martin.
Aye.
Okay. Do you have anything else for us?
Okay. Yes, Arlene's got a few comments about
I
our
think
property.
Thank you. I think my
Hello, soon to be mom.
I
Sorry.
think my portion has been well discussed, so we briefly go over this quickly. As you are fully aware, we will be bringing the RFP for the bamboo property to you at the August 20th meeting. We did include pictures of the rendering, the new design standards we have for Old 41, and the vision that the council has set forth for Old 41 as the Old Florida style. So we have had inquiries already about when it will hit the streets. So we do know that there's interest out there, and so we'll be bringing that, of course, to you on August 20th. That will be under the city manager item so that there is an opportunity for you to make revisions to that. We're not going to advertise until we have your comments on it as well first. You have fully discussed the design build RFQ and have the schedule for that. And the last is we've had several discussions about the Levin property, and we were looking for direction from council. The discussion has been that previously that we would look at the private sector developing that parcel. Would you like us to begin pursuing an RFP for that parcel as well? Or do you want us to tie that into, as you look forward to more information you get from the bamboo property? We're kind of looking from an idea from you all of when you'd like to see that move forward on the Levin property. Or if you'd like to reserve that for future use at the community/government center process.
Council, your ideas? I kind of think that, I know I brought it up that we should do an RFP on that particular piece of property, but it may be a great idea. That may be premature because it may be a great idea to include that with the community center plan that we have, because it may become an important
Agree.
part to that. I mean, whoever, if we do a private, public-private partnership there, that may be an important element for them. That's probably sauce for the goose, maybe. I mean, do you think, Council? Okay,
I
so
think
maybe,
that's fine, and I also think, as Jay was saying before, that obviously when construction starts, we're going to have to move the farmer's market.
Somewhere.
Maybe that would be a perfect spot to move the farmer's market interim until we figure out what's going on, too.
okay, so,
I think too, you're gonna wanna look at the connectivity of what the proposals you see from the Bamboo property and how connectivity is gonna work from Felt Street from behind and different mobility issues. So, these might be all things you wanna tie in, and we know that there's been
Okay.
discussion about an RFP, but we wanted to make sure if you wanted us to pursue that now, or if you wanted us to wait to schedule that as you got more information in.
okay, I think that the consensus is to wait on that particular parcel. Do you need a vote so we can,
No, I think we got direction.
is that all right?
We're good.
Because we did vote to do it, didn't we?
I don't think you voted to do it because you did it in the strategic plan workshop.
Correct.
Okay.
About it
Correct. The
there.
discussion
Right.
happened in the
Very cool.
strategic planning session
All right,
at the
good.
same time with the RFP for the Bamboo property. So we have moved forward with that. That will be at your August 20th meeting, and we'll be able to receive your comments then.
Okay, all right. What else you got?
I think
And with that,
we're
Lemon
finished.
tree.
Unless
Lemon tree.
council has any additional comments
Lemon
or
tree.
questions.
We never came up to a conclusion with the lemon tree lot, other than
I
not.
thought we did. Oh,
with the Lemon Tree lot, we understood that you had voted to not do a
The land swap, but
Correct.
remember, we had talked about during budget about possibly doing some landscaping, something, and we said, wait till today. Are we gonna move forward then with making that, is the vision to make that part of the park? Or are we just leaving that alone
Well,
too?
I don't know. We can certainly put landscaping in there, and that would not probably have much of a budgetary
Or
consequence. So we-
pavers, or something to make it look more like
Well,
it
if we're looking
belongs
with
there,
pavers, then of course that'd be significantly more money. We'd have to look at that. But then the question we have not discussed is, do you want to make that part of a park expansion, Riverside Park expansion to the south? And then, of course, how does that impact maybe another piece of property that's adjacent to that? And how far does council wants to go on that?
I think that we need to look at it, get someone to look at it holistically and just say, because, you know, I
Globally,
mean,
whatever.
we don't have much space there. And I think that it's important to get somebody, not us, professional, to really look at that and say, look, you know, incorporating the things that the whatever the market is and all this kind of stuff, here's what you can do. Because right now you turn right off and there's this parking right there at the focal point of what's going on. Is that really the best use for that? I mean, that whole parking lot on that side, I know we need parking, but maybe we need to have somebody look at that. Maybe we're missing something. I don't know. So, I mean, I think for right now, you know, making the lot look better is great, but
So would you like us to pursue a better function use for that as used towards the park?
I would like to actually see a park planner look at our park and,
We'll do a holistic look at it.
yeah, and
Thank
see
you.
if there's
Thank
something
you.
better we can do.
Yep.
Yeah. I mean, and really look at the entire park, because there's so much of that park, there's so much space there that is underutilized. I don't know. Maybe we need to get busy with it. Okay, anything else, council?
Yes.
Yes, go ahead.
Arlene, as a Seminole graduate, how did you allow a gated clock to be out there?
I paid her.
Well, I would like to share that one of the most successful stories is the city of Tallahassee that took a rail district, a previous rail industrial district
Right.
that was in disarray, and created an amazing art district. And that was also a function of Florida State University graduates who took that on as a planning project. So I'd like to share that with you at the same
Blah,
time.
blah, blah.
And I have one last comment, since you brought up the clock tower. You know that I had brought that up at Strategic Planning, that the Art and Public Places Board had made a recommendation that they felt that a clock tower would be, you know, very important to the downtown as we move forward. So maybe as we think about that town center, as in that picture from Miramar, what a great illustration. They've got their clock tower there, so maybe, you know, we can just keep that in mind.
Yes, that hasn't been lost. Actually, when you talk about a destination feature, for example, and you talk about your roundabout, you're probably going to have a smaller type feature in the center of the roundabout now. because of the likely size at Dean Street and Old 41. But yes, that's, the clock tower has not been lost in the consideration.
Yeah, and may I just add to that, Mayor, that in Vanderbilt Lakes, as you go in, we have a clock tower, and that's kind of like our center where we have, wine and cheese or something for a special event, and it's just a nice thing every time you drive through there. It's just beautiful, and that's what everybody looks forward to, a meeting for these special events, so.
Awesome.
Okay. I would just like to interject, I'm sorry, I'd just like to interject that as we're thinking about these downtown plans, as Councilman McIntosh mentioned, I mean, Bonita Springs has always been defined by water. And I think that we really need to accentuate those bodies of water on there. They're beautiful. We need people to be able to see it. I just got back from a trip to Greenville, South Carolina.
Yes.
Unbelievable park that they built
Yes, the
there.
suspension
And they
walk bridge, the
incorporated it,
walkways.
they incorporated it with private uses, with cafes and with, it's amazing. And it's different, but it's so kind of identical. There's a road that goes right through it, and on one side is the giant park, and the other side is some great private uses. There's opportunity galore here. So, but the focal point has got to be people want to be near water. They really do. So I think we need to remember that. That's what we got going for us.
Yep.
Okay. Anything else before we go to public comment? Steve, did you have something? Did you want to interject? Okay.
Well,
there you go. Go ahead, Mike.
looking at the bamboo property artist rendering, I notice a lot of colors on here that I don't think are on the current color palette. And that's something I think we should take a look at, our restrictive color palette that's down there right now.
Okay.
I thought the idea was, it's supposed to be like a Key West type theme, but, we don't have very many bright colors.
Yeah, I think that we went through that in depth, and so far I don't know. I mean, Council, what do you want to do?
We did go through it, yeah.
Do you want to go through the color palette thing again, or are you content with it? I mean, I go to Key West a lot. Sorry, I do, but I love that place. Good, it's good, right?
It's good.
Not for
I didn't
here.
make it all
Not
the
for
way
here.
back.
Not for here.
I only made it to the
No.
7 Mile Bridge this
I
trip.
always say that the reason I like to go there is because here everybody cares about everything. There, nobody cares about anything. So it's kind of nice for a change. Anyway, so I'm not getting a really good picture about there being that much garish colors or anything like that. But Council, would you like to have our architect or anybody go through the color palette thing in? Or is there any desire to do that?
I would like to make a motion that we look at the colors again.
There's a motion to look at the color palette again for the downtown area.
I'll second it.
There's a second. Any other discussion? I'll just interject that I understand the compulsion. I think colors are so subjective that I'm content with it, but the way it is. But we'll go ahead and have a roll call. Roll call, please.
Mayor Nelson,
No.
Councilman Simmons,
Aye.
Councilman Gibson,
Aye.
Councilman Longcor,
Aye.
Councilman McIntosh,
I'll take another look.
Councilwoman Martin,
Aye.
Councilman Slack.
Aye.
Okay. And you want Mike? Do you want to see staff to go ahead and go through the process like we did last time? Go ahead and using our architect Sam. Is that the way you would think to do it, Carl? Okay.
Sure, we can revisit it.
Yes. Go ahead.
One more comment.
Oh, and let's be sure we're done with this, right? Is that okay, Mike?
Yeah.
Mike, do you have anything else before I go on, Janet?
No, I think I'm good.
Okay, good. Janet?
Okay, thank you. Martha had brought it up during public comment, but that's something that I keep bringing up all the time too, is that when you arrive to downtown, we've got the welcome to historic signs on either end, and one of them is down by Rosemary, and we kind of keep forgetting about that is, another entrance to the town. And if we're doing a grand entrance from one direction, maybe we need to think about a grand direction from, entrance from the other way too. And I know we're working forward with the landscaping, that median again, if we're thinking those median plans and putting plantings, that we should be thinking about the extension of that too.
All right, I would just respond by saying that it would take city money to do that. That is not part of the improvement area that was budgeted for the $16 million.
Right. I
So
understand, so maybe, but I'm saying just maybe next time when we're phasing out what's going to be the next landscape plans, then, you know, that area just can't be forgotten.
Yeah, and,
Okay.
that is going to be incorporated in our landscaping plans, right? Those portions?
Well, eventually, yes.
Eventually, yeah.
Right.
Yeah. I stand up. I sit down. Caught that. See, I don't miss much here. Oh, well, out there. All right. Anything else?
That's it.
Council? Okay, at this time, we'll go to public comment. Anyone wishing to, could you put the lights on, Councilman Lockhart?
Of course.
Anyone wishing to speak at this time about downtown redevelopment, please come forward.
Hi, Deborah McLean, publisher of the Banana Peel. I happen to agree that the north end, which is Rosemary Creek, Hawthorne butts up to what is a canal that is basically Rosemary Creek, and it is incidental that Rosemary Drive is there. If we put a roundabout there, you'd solve a lot of problems. You would take down the old Ranch Hotel, Buffalo Chips, the little tiny gas station, and a vacant corner, and would clean up the north entrance to this area. And what I saw today, it's going to be lovely. I am glad to hear that the capture area was expanded, and I understand that we cannot change too much, but I hope that you realize that this project will be more successful if the city has expanded its thinking to take it to Matheson on the east, all the way to Wisconsin, which is near Dolly's, on the west, and to Hawthorne, the ditch that separates Rosemary Park, the area, on the north, and include the dog track in something called Dovewood Court, which is behind Donnie Malloy's, where they have all the little utility houses, the tin houses. Because if you do just one side of the street, you don't capture the south side of Beach Road. And I don't think gambling's going to go through, so we need to start thinking about that 100 acres and what kind of control we have over it and what's going in there. We don't want more industrial. We don't want low-income housing. We want something stellar. We still need a destination, not as big as the Hyatt, but we still need our own destination hotel in the city limits. And I know the Hyatt's coming or in, but we still need to do something spectacular there. And I go back to my emphasis on education and inviting young families. A private boarding school, private-public partnership would be great on that property, plus the hotel. But if gambling doesn't go through, then we put all our eggs in one basket, and we need to look at possible ways to save the Havnicheks, to help them make money. That's not an issue here that, oh gosh, I'm against gambling. That's not it. It may just not happen. And they may cut this dog track, they may shut this one down because the other two are on the other side. So I think you need to expand the boundaries, east to Matheson, west to Wisconsin, north to Hawthorne, and south to include the dog track and Dovewood Court, if you want this to be successful. And the reason you have to expand it is that the properties that you want to build, the library complex, the government complex, the 2 lots aren't big enough. I'm sorry, the community hall and the banyan tree, and the wonderful entrance and walkway, and then the actual building complex, a horseshoe with greens, it's just not big enough. You have to have another city block and another city, but you have to have 6 city blocks to do what you're talking about. I know I don't want to rain on your parade, but you're in the right direction. Don't stop because of what I'm saying. But you need more land.
Thank you. Anyone else this time, please come forward.
Good morning. For the record, Bob Hilliard. I want to commend you folks today. This was very enlightening to me. The community center area, I'm all for this being put forward. Born and raised in, for a number of my younger years in a little place called Georgetown, South Carolina, a paper mill and steel mill town of probably 50,000 people. Not a lot going on there for years and years and years. Nobody stopped when they drove through Georgetown. The city hall back in the 1920s when it was built, clock tower. Today, Georgetown is very focal point for people traveling south down 17. They stop there every day. The city hall has been preserved. It's no longer the city hall, but you go in there and you see history from back in the 20s and 30s. The Waccamaw Bay area behind that area has been built up. The docks have been built back there. There are a lot of little shops, ice cream shops, coffee shops, donut shops, sandwich shops. The tourists stop there, and that town's major product today is tourism. We focus on that in our little town, and we're going to make it happen. And the one thing that I think needs to be there that wasn't mentioned, we've got the Laos Hotel there. That's history from back many, many years. We need to have some type of museum or some type of building that we can get artifacts from back when survey was started, when people moved into Bonita Springs, to let people know when they're coming into Bonita Springs, when they go to the beautiful bamboo area once it's built, to see where we came from. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Bob. Anyone else this time, please come forward.
Hello again, Kathy McGrath. I want to commend staff and also, excuse me, all of you for all the wonderful suggestions and ideas. I don't want to address each one, it would take too long. One thing that came to mind when we were talking, when the time comes that the downtown area does grow, I won't call it a people mover, but I'm trying to think of like a, you know how the rickshaws are in Hong Kong and how the people on the boardwalk, they push them. You know, some people might want to ride something, which would be very nice. I want to thank you for nipping in the bud the land swap, excuse me, between Mr. Quinn. That lemon tree property must remain under the control of the city, whatever you decide to do because we need it when we have our events in Riverside Park. The main thing I want to discuss is the request for the vacation of easements from the Shangri-La. Let's remember, way back in the 50s, the Cheathams put that fence up. There was no zoning then. That access to Oak Creek is very important. I'm on the Waterways Advisory Committee, and any vacation of easement comes in front of us, and we look at them carefully. We just don't say no, no, no. But when there's a benefit to the public or the government, we have to keep it. Now, this raised its head years ago before we even incorporated. The attorney, very well known and very outspoken, came in front of the Waterways Advisory Committee and wanted that piece on Kentucky Street vacated. And we said no, and he said, well, I'll take my problems to the proper people. And it has raised its issue again and again. As Matt brought up, it's needed for access for dredging projects. Now, in the case of Oak Creek, you can't use evacuation. I could cite a few places where they have requested us to vacate an easement on Fort Myers Beach next to a high-rise because they wanted to vacate it, and it was needed in case there is equipment that goes out there, or hurricane evacuation, or whatever they need. But in this case, I do not see any benefit that Shangri-La can get from that piece of property from Kentucky Street to Oak Creek. I mean, I just don't think. Now, the other part, I won't even address it because I don't know all the details. That's different, the other parts. But I remember bringing this up when Gary Price was city manager, and I know Ben remembers it. I said, listen, you know, this attorney came in front of us before. Don't let them vacate that easement, and please don't. I can give you another example of vacation of easements. When it's gone forever. And I understand why people wanted this. Before I was on the Waterways Advisory Committee, Imperial River Road, if you know where that is, it's just west of where Luke Street and Vanderbilt is. There was an access to the river there. And the residents around there said, and I can understand it, the noise, the trash, the people, and they had it vacated. So there was a public's access to the river lost forever. So that's my only concern. I think the plans that have been suggested, staff did a wonderful job, and all of you brought up very important things too. This has been very enlightening. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Anyone else this time, please come forward.
Martha Simons. Great to hear some of these ideas come back to council. Thank you so much for bringing them up. Bravo to community development staff. Thank you so much for actually bringing up the recommendations for complete streets and all the things that you've been doing over the weeks and months. Complete Streets bring all those concepts together that we've talked about over the years: landscaping, lighting, safety, street furniture, pedestrian friendly. So bravo to you for bringing that forward. I think, if you get it right, you're going to be comfortable with that. I think today highlights all the different pieces. I want to thank them also, all the different pieces you've been talking about, why you need to get a visionary urban planner for this area. We've been, whipping this horse for a long time down there. Places like Naples, Fort Myers are successful with their downtown, Naples more so, of course, because they hired somebody like Andreas Dwani or Victor Dover or, one of those big names, somebody who really has some vision and understands how urban form is created. The mayor brought up having a parking lot possibly on that Levin property. I agree that it should be used for business. I don't know if you lease it, you outright sell it, but in urban planning, you want to have, you're correct, Mayor, having all that up front be for business. And then you're parking in the back. I see so much suburban planning going on and so many missed opportunities. So good for you for doing that. Look to Winter Park in Fort Myers for public-private partnerships with that library. Wow, downtown Fort Myers really got a bang for their buck there. Oak Creek, Front Street, don't give that away. We gave them 20, just to mention, all on the promise. So we're going to develop something, we're going to be opening. We gave away hundreds of thousands of dollars in code enforcement fines, waived them. We gave away 20 units of density per acre, back when we were doing redevelopment stuff a long time ago. Oak Creek's very important right there because that's where the problem happens from the railroad runoff. In order to access that, you need to get in there. So, Historical Village, maybe on the Bullard property, which is purchased for parking. And I like, not government center, town center, I think would be nice. Clock tower for sure. A theater, yes. I think the library is open until 8, so you're going to have people coming down there after 5, which is what you want. They do generate a lot of activity. Go to our library, see all the people in there. And do not vacate over there by the industrial park because there are other businesses in there. How are you going to have that connectivity right around there? If that center, if our downtown becomes fabulously successful, you're going to need that connectivity to get through there. And if any businesses do move in there that are flex space, they're going to need to have access. So the current business owners have come to you in the past to object to that vacation. Anyhow, I think you've done a great job. Hire a visionary who can help with urban planning because, we don't understand this. That's their job, and they can present it to you very nicely. Thank you. Good job.
Thank you very much. Anyone else this time? Please come forward.
Mr.
Oh,
Mayor,
hello.
no, before we close, if there's no more public comment.
Yep.
If we had the opportunity to get together as a council privately, I'd rather do this privately, but we're kind of among family here. So I realize in the last few days I've been very angry. And it's not productive for me, and it's not been productive for this council. I apologize, Bill, for being disrespectful. And I apologize, Michael, for not accepting an apology you made. And I apologize, Peter, for not shaking your hand when you asked me to. This is going to get twisted and be some sort of political comment, I'm sure. It's not. I want this council to be effective like it was, and I'm going to do my part to make it that way. It's my commitment to you. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Steve. Thank you.
May I say something?
Yes, Bill.
Steve, I appreciate what you said, and I'm with you, and I'm with the entire council and working together. I show no animosity to anyone, and I know how difficult it is to make decisions when we're up here on the dais, and I know you all work hard, and let's make the next couple years as successful for all of us, and I know we can do it as a team, and I want to work with every one of you. Thank you.
Bonita first. What about that? Okay? Good. All right. Anyone else? No? See ya. Thank you very much. Everyone, well done.